Hey guys, it's Adam from Lucid Pixel and welcome back. Today I want to speak to every one of you artists out there. And I'm not necessarily just talking to visual artists. Maybe you're multiple artists. Maybe you do music and sing and dance and draw and paint and all of the above. Or maybe you're just one. Maybe you're a seasoned professional who's been doing this for 30, 40 years and you're loved and adored all around the world. Or maybe you're somebody who's just picked up a pencil 2 weeks ago and just discovered your passion. What I want to share with you today is equally important for every single one of you. And hopefully what I share with you today will help to drive your purpose and shed some light on your future moving forward if you find yourself in a bit of a dark place. And like I said, this doesn't only apply to people who are just beginning their artistic career. This applies equally, if not in many cases, more so to popular, famous professional artists. I want to get down to the core of what made us who we are, what brought us to where we are today. And my guess is, if you're listening to this video, knowing full well that this is an art channel and knowing full well what I do professionally and what I teach professionally, my guess is you are my kindred spirit, and my guess is you get me and understand me fully. So what is it that brings us together, and what is it that is going to sustain you and push you forward and give you drive throughout your career when things are difficult, when things are boring, and when finding a way to keep going seems difficult? Well, let's get right back to the beginning. At the beginning, we don't have talent yet. There might be a few of us, like 1 in a million, that have this, this godly talent that paves the way for other people. And in pretty much any career you can imagine, from programming to skateboarding to painting to music to no matter what, we always have our prodigies. And if you are one of those prodigies, then my respect and my admiration. But to the other 99% of us, we don't necessarily have that God-given talent just yet. We don't have anything just yet. Yet, here you are equally listening to me, right? You are paying as close attention to what I'm saying right now, and you are as equally involved in this channel and in this community as I am, even though you're very new to it and you haven't necessarily made any substantial, groundbreaking contributions to it and the future betterment of art in general. Yet, you're still here. And you might not know why you're here. You might be sitting here learning art and practicing and training and watching tutorials and taking courses and all that stuff because something deep down inside you has brought you here. And I want to help to define that for you. I want to show you and express to you why you're here, particularly if you haven't discovered it just yet. It might still be sitting in your subconscious. The best way to do this is to firstly use the tool that we've been given to create art in the first place. Of course, we have the technical side to our art. There's technical things we need to learn. There's principles we need to learn in order to be able to communicate ourselves effectively. But at the core of who we are and what we create is our feelings. Don't mistake it for 2 seconds. You might not realize this yet, but the true purpose of creating art, and I mean art, I'm not just talking about design in itself, I'm talking about the art form, is the communication of feelings from one person to another. Sometimes those feelings can be very objective, and I can say, this is my feeling, and this is what I'm painting, and this is the expression of that feeling. I can be very obvious about it. Sometimes those feelings need to be uncovered. Sometimes they need to be interpreted. Look at this painting, for instance. It's a very abstract painting, as you can see. There's nothing objectively logical about what I'm painting necessarily. You might get little remnants. There might be certain little things that your eyes adhere to. You might be visualizing things as I'm painting, and you might be picking out certain things that make you think of other certain things. That's kind of the point of this painting in the first place. A painting like this that you're looking at allows you to involve yourself in the process. Invest your own feelings, your own visualizations. Interpret your own things. You might interpret things that are inherent within you. You might be projecting your own feelings onto it, or you might be trying to get into my head and figure out, why did Adam paint that in the first place? The reality is, when you paint like this, when I'm painting with my feelings like this, I'm not, well, at least the challenge is not being subjective with my feelings. I'm not trying to tell you anything. I keep reminding myself to keep the thought open, keep the expression open, but follow a mood, a feeling, and paint whatever comes to me. My painting, as it unfolds, is as much of a surprise and a mystery to me right now as it is to you while you watch it. And I will very possibly uncover other things about this piece of artwork that I myself wasn't even aware of, because it's incredible how often I have people, even today, reaching out to me, sharing thoughts about me, about what I do, about what I express, back at me in ways that I never even interpreted myself. I have people reach out to me and enlighten me about me all the time, which is kind of amazing and remarkable. Everything I'm saying here has to do with feelings, but we very often attribute feelings to the superficial, to facial expressions, the expression of fear, the expression of anger, the expression of disgust or love or lust. Sometimes feeling is just an energy. Sometimes feeling is just a vibe, a rhythm, a wavelength that you're following. And your feelings, who you are as a living being on this planet, are far more than just thoughts and expressions. You're the product of millions and millions of years of evolution. The complexity of who you are as a living creature. Forget about being human. Just talk about a living creature. The complexity of life itself is something that, as a teacher, even from a technical, scientific perspective, is so incredibly, fantastically complicated and intricate and beautiful and balanced and imbalanced in all the perfect and imperfect ways that I marvel at its complexity every single day. You have to be open to this reality as a person as you slowly move your way forward, ebbing back and forth between the artistic expression and the technical expression. Sometimes your technical expression will be weak, so you work on that and you let go of the artistry for a little while and you practice your values and your rendering and your perspective. And just as easily, sometimes you'll grow very bored of the technical and you'll feel like you're losing touch with what made you an artist in the first place. You start to lose touch with your passion, and you reach out to have your spark relit. That is the process, the back and forth process of growth as an artist. But at the core of all this is the feeling that drove you there in the first place. And in my life, in my experience, I've experienced only a few times, and I've been on this planet for approaching now 44 years. There have only been a few times in my life where I experienced this feeling. The first was Not when I first started doing art. I knew I loved drawing, and I got a lot of recognition for drawing when I was a kid in elementary school. I remember the day I realized that I could succeed artistically, and I got that appreciation from my teachers and from my peers. But I remember it wasn't until much later on in my career. I had already even started going to school in art at that point, and I remember discovering in me, with artistic training, that I was capable of producing a type of art that up until that point I never thought possible. It was an art style that was reserved solely for the gods, and I would never be that. And one day I realized I reached a point, a little fork in the road, that presented to me the way to do it. And I knew that was going to be the rest of my life. What I'm describing to you is this unbending belief that I will be this. Unbending belief that this is who I am before I can prove it. Before I had the technical talent to prove it. The belief came before the talent. In my life, I have been presented countless opportunities, ranging from every imaginable walk of life, at least any imaginable one to me so far. But when I was presented with this option, when I was presented with this reality, and I argue that it was beyond my own already existing artistic knowledge. It was an understanding at that point in my life that this was why I did it in the first place. I realized that I had spent the first decade and a half at least through high school and elementary school and even college and into university pursuing art without fully understanding why, but just knowing, having the feeling that it was going to lead to something. And one day it did. And when I saw this, when I felt it with my body and with my mind, I knew that come hell or high water, come starvation, the plague, whatever, this was who I was and this is where I was going. I can't describe it. It was love. I think love is the only way I could possibly describe it, because love can be moments of pure joy, but love can be sadness, it can be vulnerability, it can be betrayal, it can be heartbreak, it can be boredom, it can be frustration, it can be euphoria. It's something inside you that unlocks your truest self. And when you find love, be it in a person or a thing, it is an all-encompassing, defining factor of your life. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to lead to being a professional. Another such time in my life that I discovered this, that I had this feeling was, and I probably even spoke about it in earlier talks years ago, is the first time I discovered dance. Truly discovered dance, because I had danced all through high school and stuff. I was always following dance trends. But when I walked into a swing dance club, and I walked into what could only be described as a time portal into the 1930s. Big band jazz, everybody dressed up in 1930s dresses, and the women with their hair tied up, and the red dress, and flaring out as she spun with the two-tone shoes, and the guys with their hair slicked back and their zoot suits, and the guys with their fedoras and the big bad voodoo daddy plating and everything like that. And I just looked at this with my mouth open for what probably was several hours, not moving, just staring with my mouth open for hours in awe, thinking to myself this recurring thought, I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life. I ended up opening up a dance club. At that point, I was kind of halfway in between swing dancing and jive dancing. I hadn't quite fully discovered salsa at that point. But I even got into starting my own business and opening a club. And hiring DJs and all that kind of fun stuff. And I did it for a little while. I decided that art was my true main passion, or at least drawing and painting was my true main passion. And I wanted to make that my core. But that dance was an equally important part of it, whether or not I pursued it professionally. And it still is. All these decades later, it is as defining a part of who I am today. Whether I go 3 days a week or whether I go once a month, it is a defining part of who I am. Every single day. It is something that my body believes. And that belief came before the talent. I never danced with a partner in my life. I did hip hop. I did, all different types of dances and stuff like that. Never in my life did I ever dance a single day of swing dancing. But when I walked in there, I knew it was going to be forever. And I felt exactly the same way with salsa. In fact, arguably, salsa swept me off my feet even further. But I knew before I could do it. And because I had such a strong, passionate belief in it, I grew quickly. Not because I was more talented than anybody else. It was because it meant so much to me. When something means the world to you, you will invest yourself fully into it. Now, here's where this passion, this belief, this driving force can get derailed. It's happened to me. It can happen to you at any point in your career. And although it can be a very strong driving force, if it is the only driving force you have, then I can say with confidence that your days are numbered in this career. And that's this worldly belief that in this world, as people, in this competitive world that we live in, that there's this thing called placement and hierarchy. This first place, second place, third place mentality. But let's call it what it is. There is no such thing as second place. There's only first place. There's first place and there's not first place. And unless you're on top, you're the one fighting and striving to be that person on top. We all dream and aspire to be that number one, that best of all. But here's the thing. Being the best, the reality of being first place is that it leaves no room for anybody else. If everybody's striving for a single spot and we only value, or you only value, the number one, then you're taking for granted every other person on this planet. It leaves absolutely no room for anybody but the best. But here's the truth. Being the best is boring. It completely lacks substance of any kind. It's hollow and it's frail. The true path to growth, connection, love, drama, feeling is in the struggle to get there in the first place. The struggle is the love. It is the passion and it is the drive. In an interview with Rodney Mullen, probably one of the grandfathers of skateboarding, he invented the gross majority of the vocabulary of skateboarding as it is today. He describes something that even though I've never, technically ever reached his level of notoriety and greatness, I can very much relate, and I'm very sure you can relate to this too, in any of your successes. He was asked the question why he threw away all of his first place trophies. Because he was unbeatable. He was just leagues ahead of everybody else. He was technically and artistically leagues ahead of everybody else. And he described being number one as a trap. Because when you reach number one, if number one is all you wish to be, then like he said, and like I just mentioned before, your days are numbered. Because when you reach the top of the mountain, quoting Nietzsche, when you reach the top of the mountain, the only thing left is lightning. The only thing left is for you to get zapped and fall off the mountain. If your only goal is to reach number one, you will get bored of being number one very quickly. And that's very often why you see people who reach the pinnacle of success. They just race up to the top and they get it. And they get their bestseller. They get their number one hit. And then they disappear off the face of the planet. Success can kill people if all their goal was success. They had to have a vision and a feeling to drive them to that point. And they have to, especially when they reach the top, be reminded of what it is that got them there in the first place. Because as Rodney Mullen describes, when you're on top, which he was on top for many years, when you're on top, after the fame and the trophy and the cheers and the admiration, which is all wonderful, once that all subsides, you're left with nothing but you and your board. You're left with nothing but your canvas and your paintbrush, your pencil and your sketchbook. That's it. You in your simplest form, exactly the way you got into this industry is exactly where you're going to be at the top. The cheers are going to quiet down and you're going to come back home and you're going to sit down on your chair in front of your computer, or you're going to sit down in front of your TV or on your carpet in the middle of the floor next to your cat with nothing but you and your sketchbook. And you're going to have to continue to have a reason to keep drawing. And if that belief, if that love, if that drive, if that direction, if that passion is no longer there because you've already achieved your ultimate goal, from that point on, constructing and creating anything will be incredibly difficult, if not impossible. So you need to always remind yourself why you got there in the first place. But here's a little piece of advice from somebody who made a great discovery in his life too. Speaking, of course, about me, myself. And that is, I, just like you, love growth. I love discovery. And when in my last art talk, I spoke about the joy of rediscovering and learning a basic trick in skateboarding. Something that I took for granted for so many years when I was younger. But since I took such a long break from it, I had to pretty much learn things almost from scratch. And when I landed my first clean ollie, the most basic of basic moves in skateboarding, I felt euphoria. I felt exhilaration. I felt like my heart grew 10 times bigger. I remembered the feeling of doing something new and doing something great. And if you're somebody who starves for that feeling, as I do to this day, what do you do when you are at that point in your career that you've strived to get to your whole life? What do you do from there? You cannot survive off of just continuing to do what got you there in the first place. As the expression goes, what does not grow dies. And if all I was trying to do was just recreate the same drawing I kept drawing, recreating that same formula that I created to get me to where I am in my career right now, I would have dropped out of the race a long time ago. I realized by happenstance, it was by chance I was introduced to this career because I was actually looking towards being a student. I approached a school asking about taking a course in, I can't remember what it was, some art course. When the director looked at my artwork and said, "Have you ever considered teaching?" And I thought, sure, okay. I never really thought about it. It never really occurred to me to pursue a career in teaching. And sure enough, she set me up with an interview with a school and I ended up getting the job, teaching in animation. And I didn't realize that that was the key to unlocking the rest of my life. I realized that teaching Or more specifically, using what I've learned so far as a tool for others to grow is what brought back that feeling again. My ability, what the real true joy of being a teacher. Now, I'm not saying be a teacher, but I'm saying the real true joy of teaching or doing a similar type of career offers the artist the gift of reliving discovery every single day. The joy of growth and discovery. Every single day, people ask me the question, how can you stay so passionate and involved in teaching the same thing over and over and over again? Because I get better at making others better every single day. I get better at communicating my thoughts fully to somebody else in a way that allows them to be able to unlock their own potential. And that to me is a discovery. That to me is a euphoria of growth. It is being able to relive that discovery of the fundamentals in somebody else every single day. And the feeling that you get from somebody else having that aha moment is so amazing, because I know how hard it was to get there and to get that answer. And for me to be able to play a part in them uncovering that answer means the world to me. So what does this mean for you? It means that as an artist, very often we live in our own little cocoon. We live in a quiet little world where and I love this quiet world too. I like my privacy. I love listening to something and inspiring myself and just getting lost in my artwork, as I was when I painted this. But at a certain point, you need to use this gift you have and what you've learned from it to communicate with the world around you, to those who understand you, to other artists, to your peers. The ability to be able to communicate your feelings and your heart to other people. Open up your artwork to the world around you. Don't just use it as a tool to show off that you're the best. I do anatomy better than so-and-so. I draw dragons more impressively than this person. I can render metal better than that person can do it. My colors are better than so-and-so. Instead, let go of that and look at your artwork as a means of communication. Look at your artwork as a means of tethering your heart and your mind and your feelings to somebody else. It can be through design. It can be through fine art. It can even be through architecture or flavor or sound. But what you're truly trying to do is take all of this talent and forge something. Forge a connection with others in a way that is human and authentic and deep and meaningful. And that is what's going to make your artwork memorable, and is what is going to feed your soul and your growth moving forward. Because once you reach a certain level of skill and notoriety in your own artwork, unless you're doing anything with it, you end up throwing it in the trash. It's like a super expensive, ultra wide, 144 hertz gaming monitor that becomes obsolete after a couple of years because a 260 hertz monitor came out that's 43 inches and not just a measly 35 inches. And it's got a higher resolution. It's an 8K. It's not a 1080p. There's always a new, bigger, better invention that's going to make you obsolete, unless what you create makes others less obsolete. Your intention, your purpose is not to defeat. Your intention and purpose is to use whatever success you have to help others grow. And you realize that your talent is bigger than just you. Your talent is a part of a community that needs to hear and experience you in your fullest. And that is the true expression of art. One of my favorite artistic expressions, which I'm sure I've said more than once, is Learn the technicalities of drawing and painting so well that you can one day abandon the technicalities and start creating the real thing, art. With that understanding, look at a Disney animation and then look at a Looney Tunes animation. Watch Duck Amuck, a goofy, silly cartoon of Daffy Duck that keeps losing his shit because Bugs Bunny keeps redesigning the background as he's trying to do his skit. And frame by frame, the moments when Daffy Duck is skipping along singing to himself or losing his mind because he's basically being trolled artistically by Bugs. Frame by frame, and you'll realize that the frames are almost absolutely nonsensical. Chuck Jones and his fellow artists were not drawing poses. They were not drawing cool-looking keyframes. They were drawing and animating the rhythm and movement and appearance of emotion. And that's why when Daffy Duck makes some absolutely crazy, bizarre expression on his face, you can absolutely feel his utter dark annoyance with what's going on. It's palpable because Chuck Jones used his art to communicate feeling to you. And despite the fact that it was drawn decades and decades ago, you feel it as potently and as authentically as it was when he first drew it and it first appeared on the big screen. So why are you here? Why are you listening to me? Why are you sitting here 32 minutes into this talk still listening to me? Why haven't you tuned me out yet? Because there's more to you than just somebody who picks up a pen and makes drawings. You might not know why yet that you are here with this belief in all capitals, this unbending belief that this is the career you want to pursue, even though you can't draw for shit yet. There's a reason why you're here, because in this forum, this guild of artists that we live in, you are surrounded by kindred spirits. And by kindred spirits, you're not just people who love to draw. It is a core belief in who you are as a human being, what you represent as a person, as a member of this society. It takes more than just drawing pretty drawings to be an artist. An artist, again, I put emphasis on that, and not just somebody who designs vehicles for a living, okay? An artist. The emotional side of what being an artist is. You, for instance, might have a very low tolerance for political bullshit, because to you, the true human experience that involves feelings and love and selflessness is far more meaningful and valuable to you than showing off to your peers that you've got a nice new tie or a new electric car or your haircut or your makeup or your electrolysis or your boob job. You realize just how completely meaningless all of that stuff is, because it's just slapping plastic packaging, superficial decoration, meaningless decoration over what really matters, humanity. You can fully feel the importance and the beauty of the raw human form and the raw human mind without superficial decoration and titles. To me, I want to know who you truly are. Does the core of your personality, of your being, actually have substance to it? Or are you just some guy who's completely driven every day by getting more money, more power, bigger car, bigger home, fancier home? It's always finite, and there's always an upgrade out there waiting to make what you have obsolete. So it doesn't mean shit to me. You, as a member of this community, are a believer in something far more meaningful. You can strip away all of this bullshit, get down to the raw essence of what light looks and feels like traveling through a leaf. You can look at an insect and find its inherent beauty. You can experience life in its smallest and simplest form and uncover and present to your audience its inner beauty. You can communicate what matters on the level of the soul to the world around you. That's not something to be taken for granted. Superficial, business-oriented individuals who direct their lives by financial gain will never understand that. And that's why very often artists have a hard time putting a numerical value on their work, because money in and of itself has no substance. Again, I can't stress this enough. This is why you're here. That's what you believe, even if you haven't realized it fully yet. It's the deep roots of your consciousness that's interconnected with every other artist around you, from any and every venue of art that exists, because we're all the same in the end. What you create has true meaning from the human perspective, because what you're actually recreating and deciphering is humanity in its truest forms. You might just not know that yet. If you realize and connect yourself with this very deep understanding of what being an artist is, then you'll be that one very big step closer to understanding why you chose this complicated and sometimes painful and difficult path in life. Because something deep within you is willing to sacrifice it all to create this very human connection in the best way you know how to. This is the realization that I made only a handful of times in my life before I even realized it. And despite the genre itself, and despite whether I decided to pursue it professionally or not, one commonality existed every single time. It was the unbending belief that I was going to do this for the rest of my life. It was the unbending belief that even though I have no idea how to do it yet, I will, even if I have to suffer and starve to achieve it. The unbending belief that this is a key to unlocking my truest sense of self, finding my truest purpose. The unbending belief that it is who I am, even though I have no idea how to achieve it yet, but I know I will. If you're at the very beginning of your journey as an artist, never mistake for a moment that your belief in yourself as an artist is as real, as potent, as meaningful, and as important as someone like me who has done it for decades. You are as much a valuable member of this beautiful community of topmost professional artists. Top professionals, those who are deified by those who aspire to be them, understand this fact, and as much might very well reject the idea of being doted on and deified. They needed to embrace their normalcy, their commonality to you, to continue to thrive and succeed once they did hit the top. Because they realized that being on top is an illusion. It's fiction. It doesn't exist. And in the end, just like you, we are all just sitting there in our room, on our carpet, next to our dog or our cat. I'm a cat person, so I'll sit next to my cat. Not that there's anything wrong with being a dog person, to each their own, although cats are better. But in the end, I'm sitting down on the carpet next to my cat, listening to music with my sketchbook, and that's all I've got, just like you. There's nothing greater or worse than with me than with you. And it's my job to remind you of that. Because I'm older, I've been doing it a little bit longer, I run a school, I have a YouTube channel, etc., etc. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. What matters is that you understand that there is zero difference between you and I. Just time. But we both, our passion and our belief and the meaning and purpose that art gives you and I is identical. I just have a little bit more time to be able to communicate that passion. I've had a chance to eat crow more often than you have and succeed a few more times than you have. So I can help give you insight into where you might be going with this. But we are on exactly the same page. There is zero difference. Don't you forget that for 2 seconds. And for those artists that do hold their fame and notoriety in highest regard, and they do look down on and don't want to waste their time with the common rabble, I've seen it time and time again, because I'm old enough to have seen this happen time and time again. Those people, their days are numbered. When somebody sits on top of the pile and kicks everybody else off and says, no, I'm the floating celestial being on top, fuck off, they don't stick around for too long. They come and go. Because there's only so long you can hold on to a title until eventually your muscles wear out and they weaken and you can't hold on anymore. Nor do you have the desire to. So you let that go and you realize, what the hell do I do next? Look at Bobby Fischer. A young kid who became the world top chess champion. Confided he did have some pretty serious emotional issues to deal with as well. But he went into a deep slump and depression once he did win that title. Because his whole life was wrapped around doing one thing and one thing only. Being number one. And once he got there, he was left with nothing but him and his struggling mind to deal with, without anything else to adhere to. And that was finite. He disappeared, and that was the end of him. It's sad and tragic, but I've seen it more than once. It's for that very reason that today's talk is dedicated to you. Because everything that I've just expressed today is everything that you do for me every single day. You might think that you're giving of yourself every day. You might think that Adam gives of himself every week or every few weeks. With respect to my current summer schedule, it's been pretty busy. But you guys give back to me 10 times what I give to you. I show my love and affection to you guys all the time for just being an amazing community. But I'm not just saying it because I'm trying to butter up my YouTube community to make more subs. I honestly couldn't give a shit if there were only 10 of you. Or 5 of you, or even 1. Because every single time you guys reach out to me, you feed my soul. You bring me joy. You reciprocate that passion right back at me. Hell, I even got a couple of emails, very important emails, from one from a former student and one from just a guy who just reached out to me, offering a few kind of professional tips on my logo design that were absolutely freaking brilliant. And he's going to get full credit of that come soon. Just stay tuned because there's some pretty exciting stuff coming up with regards to that. But just was a stranger then, who decided to go out of his way to offer me a couple of brilliant observations with regards to the Lucid Pixel logo. And my jaw hit the ground. It was absolute genius staring me right in the face that I didn't have the skill to notice until he pointed it out to me. And I looked at that and I went, why the hell didn't I ever think of that? That's absolutely genius. And I'll be sharing with you that soon, as well as the brilliant artist who shared this observation with me. So stay tuned for that. But I'm dedicating today's video to you as you sit there alone in your room, on the bus, listening to this talk. Because I know you know exactly what I'm talking about. I know that if I talk about certain technical aspects of drawing, certain things I might share with you might be a little over your head because I've had a chance to practice them a little bit longer than you. But who gives a shit? I know that on an emotional level, I know that you completely understand me. And I know that everything that I'm saying holds a lot of meaning to you because we're both artists. We both are a part of this same belief system. We both know this, even though we might not be technically capable just yet. And if we are, never forget the value and the importance of not hoarding that to yourself. You have a community of people out there now that really, really need you. And it's through that giving back that you will rediscover the euphoria and the joy of discovery, as I do every single day, with every single student, with every single person that reaches out to me to selflessly offer their love, support, and brilliant logo ideas. So with that said, happy painting. I love you with all my heart, and take care.